Hi, this is Amy.
And Melissa. We are a couple of retired Texas teachers who are CALTs, Certified Academic Language Therapists. We started our own businesses, and now we have a podcast called The Dyslexia Duo.
So join us for our informative podcast, where we'll delve into dyslexia, covering the topics that affect parents, therapists, teachers, practitioners, and anyone who wants to learn more. We'll guide you through everything you need to know, from the first signs to the intricacies of dyslexia curriculum placement and beyond.
This season, we will cover the referral process, what to expect when your child or student is dyslexic, the generational impacts of dyslexia, and how to support those affected.
Come join us! Let's resume our conversation with the insights of Lindsay Kemeny. So, what has guided you in your series of books? Let's just talk about your first one, The 7 Mighty Moves for Reading Success. How has what you've learned, all the assessment, how to guide it from the data, how has that supported you in writing this book?
So as my son was diagnosed, right, it took me really a year to understand everything and all the changes that I needed to make in my classroom. In fact, I just remember a couple months after he was diagnosed, I remember being in like a parent Facebook support group, and one of the parents was asking about a certain program, and another parent said, well, that's balanced literacy. So that's like the worst thing for our kids. And I was like, what is she talking about? Balanced literacy is the best way to teach reading, And it was just really kind of gradual for me to understand that some of the practices that I was using, were like a huge part of balanced literacy that I had to get rid of. Things like the 3 cueing system, those predictable repetitive texts and all of that. When my son was first diagnosed, I got a tutor right away that was familiar with dyslexia because I didn't know what to do. But it was really expensive, so we could only afford twice a week. And it's just something I kind of regret because he was so severe. He needed intervention every single day. And it took me a year, but then I felt comfortable enough to start working with him. And then I could work with him every day because I was free, right? And that's when we really started seeing results. Okay, that was kind of a long beginning to answer your question, but I was making changes as I was working with him, and then I was also applying the changes in the classroom. And so I was making changes. I was teaching kindergarten at the time. So I was making changes in my kindergarten classroom, and then I got moved back to second grade, which I had taught for years. And so I made these changes in second grade, and then I got moved to first grade and then made the changes in first grade. And what I found is that I could categorize those changes I was making into these 7 moves. So that's the basis of the book, 7 Mighty Moves. They represent those 7 changes I made in my classroom after learning about evidence-based literacy instruction after my son was diagnosed.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So what are those 7 mighty moves?
That was going to be my question.
Yeah. So move 1 is teaching phonemic awareness with intention. Phonemic awareness was something like I didn't even know existed. And it's embarrassing. I taught second grade for years, and I never considered that my students who struggled learning to read might have a deficiency in that area. And that is an area where I had to shift a couple times, because first was just to start teaching phonemic awareness. And then it was, I could refine my knowledge and learn that, hey, we want to get to blending and segmenting. Those are the most critical skills. We want to get to the phoneme level. We don't need to spend a ton of time in the whole group on phonemic awareness, but students are going to need more. And so those students, you can help in small group. Move 2 is to teach phonics explicitly and systematically. I thought I was teaching phonics, but what I was doing when I think back was I was more facilitating phonics activities instead of teaching explicitly phonics. Move 3, to teach decoding strategies not 3 cueing strategies. Move 4 was to use decodable texts for beginning readers instead of those predictable repetitive texts. That was a huge one as a kindergarten teacher. Move 5 is to use a better approach for teaching high frequency words. Really, you guys, I could go on an hour on each of these moves. So I'll just tell you what they are. Move 6 is on fluency instruction. So, and being kind of giving that enough practice and that meaningful practice for fluency instruction. And move 7 is about improving comprehension and an area. There's so many things when we think about reading comprehension. Like if reading comprehension goes wrong, there's so many different things that could be. But my focus here was thinking about building that vocabulary and background knowledge, using strategies to help us build that background knowledge. So that's what move 7 is.
Wow. I really love this. We talked to Jan Hasbrook, and she talked about decodable text, and she talked about how to improve fluency, you have to improve accuracy. And that's where I really love that you've got the idea of teaching the decodable text and the blending and the segmenting, all the things that really are going to make a difference in improving the accuracy so that they can increase their fluency. A lot of times people think you just got to get them to read faster and then they're going to read better. That's not the case.
Yeah. Well, you think fluency is a combination of accuracy, rate, prosody, right? And I love Dr. Jan Hasbrook said that automaticity is a combination of accuracy and rate. And she said automaticity is the heart and soul of fluency. And I've always loved that. And you think about, like, sometimes you think, oh, I'm kindergarten, I'm first grade, I'm not really working on fluency. Yes, you are. We're building that automaticity at those different levels, at the letter level, at the letter pattern level, at the word level, and then at the sentence paragraph level. So, yeah.
Right. And everybody plays a crucial part. Kindergarten teachers play a super crucial part. First grade teachers, very important part. We all need to work together to bridge that gap so that they can develop their reading skills.
Yeah.
I love that.
If I had to write a book, it would be automaticity is the name of the game for all of it. Honestly, you should be automatic when you're naming alphabet letters and you're isolating sounds and phonological awareness. It should be automatic.
Absolutely. You want it automatic so they don't have to think about it, right? We want their cognitive attention going towards the meaning. What am I learning about? What am I reading about? And they can't think about that if they're having to think about and slowly sound out a word, right? But they have to go through that step at first, right? To get those words in memory for effortless retrieval. So like you can't skip that step. And like you said, Melissa, we can't be like, well, read faster.
Right.
We've got to work on that accuracy first.
Right. So you had mentioned a few times about explicitly, and those of us who are in the dyslexia world, we know about explicit instruction. And I'm so glad that you have written these books and you're getting that explicit instruction out there as well. What do you mean by explicit instruction?
Explicit instruction is instruction that's very clear, very direct. It's interactive. So sometimes people think when they hear explicit instruction, they think, oh, that's just so boring and old-fashioned, and the teacher is up there lecturing, and that is not what explicit instruction is. And if you came to my classroom and watched a phonics lesson, you would see how interactive it is. I do something, they do something. I say something, they say something. I read something, they read something. I write something, they write something. And I'm channeling Dr. Anita Archer here. She is the queen of explicit instruction. But that is so important that students have a lot of opportunities to respond in the lesson. That is huge. That boosts engagement. That boosts learning outcomes. And it decreases off-task behavior or disruptive behavior. So I'm like, that sounds like a win-win to me, right? So yeah, explicit instruction is so important. And it's especially important for our students with dyslexia. They're not going to discover this information on their own. If they were going to discover it, they would have already discovered it by now. They don't. We need to teach it to them explicitly. So, and then there's also the gradual release, right? As part of explicit instruction. So I model something, we do something together, they do it on their own. But it's not always like as beautiful and perfect as just I do, we do, you do.
Right.
A lot of times it's I do, we do, we do, we do, we do, we do, you do. Oh, we do, we do,
Yes.
we do, you.
Yes. And I'm watching you. Yeah.
So, and like we have to be keenly aware of our students. We're really watching to see when we can release them and when they're not ready. And students need varying amounts of practice that we do. And it's really easy to skip from I do to you do, but we need that gradual release and that gradual fading, like that we kind of during that we kind of scaffold, we help them a little bit more like, oh, remember that when you hear oi in the middle of the word, it's probably going to be oi. And that's like a verbal scaffold. And then gradually we pull that back and we're not giving them that, but we're just giving them the word. And we're just gradually pulling back. And our students with dyslexia are going to need a lot more practice than others. So everyone needs varying amounts of practice. So that's when it's important to get that small group practice in, right?
So you say this works pretty well in a general education classroom.
Absolutely.
And then as far as if anybody needs more support, do they come to like a small group and you're working with them a little bit more when you see they need a little bit more of that scaffolding and review?
Yeah, exactly. So not all my students need as much small group of support as others. So there's some of my students that I meet with them every day in small group. And there's others that I see them once a week in small group because they don't need me as much. So it's about equity, right? It's about giving each student what they need individually.
Well, and what I love too is that, you know, like we spoke with Kareem Weaver recently, they are not just dyslexic when they come to the dyslexia pull-out instruction. They're dyslexic in the general education classroom too. And so when you are teaching your phonics lesson in the general education classroom, it needs to match what they're used to getting either in the dyslexia classroom or the special education classroom, wherever their needs are being met. But it needs to be relevant to how they can learn. It needs to be something they can acquire. I love that.
They're all tier 1 students. They're all tier 1. And so we've got to help all of them in the classroom, right? And not just some of them. And yeah, Melissa, what you're saying is like, we would love more alignment between what is happening when they're pulled out and what is happening in the classroom. And it's so nice when I'm familiar. I do have students that are pulled out for intervention. My worry is that sometimes teachers then like check them off. Like they think, oh, the interventionist is going to help them. It's still my responsibility as the teacher. So like, I just feel also passionately that they still need intervention from the teacher. They're all tier 1 students and we've got to meet their needs the best we can in the general education classroom, as well as in their tier 2 or tier 3 support, whatever they're getting.
I agree.
What I think was so interesting about what you said when you talked about the I do, we do, you do, we do, you do, we do, I do, you know, going back and forth.
Yeah.
That gradual release model, that is one of the things, the big tenets of dyslexia therapy too. So I like that you're seeing that that tie-in from tier 1 maybe to tier 2 into tier 3, which is where Melissa and I are, because that is when I train teachers to be dyslexia therapists, that's one of the things I teach, you know, that I do, we do, you do model, and that gradual release of responsibility, you know. So I love that tie-in. I think that's great. So let's talk about teacher education programs. What are some changes in teacher ed programs that you think would be helpful to develop educators who are maybe more aware of dyslexia?
I wish I had been taught about dyslexia in my teacher prep program. So, you know, there are so many misconceptions out there about what it is. So, I mean, I wish that they would focus on that a little bit more because it's so prevalent. Like I said, it's the most commonly diagnosed learning disability, and that we would get professional development too. Once we're in service, more professional development centered around dyslexia, because, what is good for students with dyslexia is good with everyone. For everyone. So sometimes we think they need something completely different than everyone else, and that's not really true. They might need it with more intensity, and they're going to need more practice and more scaffolding. But that, that explicit instruction that we're talking about, that is so beneficial for students with dyslexia. And if we could just get more accurate information, it's not about vision. It's not about seeing backwards. We don't need color overlays,
specialized fonts.
Yeah, that's not what dyslexia is. And it's still so common out there. So I wish we could get, more accurate information about it.
Yeah, I wish we could too. So, and it's prevalent. I'm on a lot of parent forums and I'm reading and they're like, oh, what font works best? What overlay? I'm like, guys, come on.
Yeah.
And if I fought that battle all the time, I would never be off of social media, honestly.
Well, and Amy and I both had talked too about how we felt the same way about our teacher education programs, that we weren't told about dyslexia. We didn't really know anything about.
No. And I went to, like I said, I went to college for my bachelor's in the late 80s, early 90s. And I had one class that talked about dyslexia, and it was a special ed class, and they brought it up in terms of a definition. And so we talked about it a little bit, and then we went on. And I had just said that I was a teacher's child. And my mom, because it was a small school, she ended up being my classroom teacher twice, which was all kinds of fun, in first grade and in fourth grade. And I remember asking her about this little boy, because I could read. I wasn't one of those kids that needed additional support. I needed help with math, but not so much with reading. And I remember asking her about this little boy that was in our class. And I was like, why is he having such a hard time? She goes, I don't know. I don't know. Then that little boy made her go get her master's. And so you got to think, this is back in the 70s. She actually had to drive out and during the summer and get her master's and become a special ed teacher so that she can get that information. Mm-hmm. I now know, that he had dyslexia, but my mom wasn't even sure of what was going on with that young man. So knowing what you know, and we know that all of our classroom teachers have curricula that they're working from. How can they take what you say, like the science of reading, and put it into their daily lesson plans to kind of pump up what they have?
We want to be as knowledgeable we can about the science of reading. It's not because remember, it's like this body of research. It's asking ourselves, are the practices I'm doing, do they have research to support them? Is there research for this? Is there research against this? How much research is there, evidence is there with the program I'm using? Is there evidence that it works? And we have to be smarter than our programs. So I think teacher knowledge is so huge. Also because there is not research for every single little thing we do in our classrooms. So we've got to take the research that we know about, we've got to figure out how to best apply it in the classroom. We have to make the best informed decisions we can. So I think it's all about trying to, really increase our knowledge so we can make the most effective decisions. It's like just throughout the day. I mean, how many decisions do you think we make as educators? I mean, there's so many. And those programs, I like thinking of programs like, they're like a road map, like a paper map that tell us the destination we need to, tell us where to go. But that map doesn't tell us what to do if we get off course or if the student doesn't reach their destination. That's when we need Google Maps, right? Because don't you love when you take a wrong turn and Google Maps is rerouting, and then they get you back on course. And to me, that's kind of why we need that knowledge, because we need to know, what do I have to do to help the student, because, it's not working for them. So I just think teacher knowledge is so important in this. Yes, be as familiar as you can with the research, get the very best tools you can. And that's a lot of times beyond our control, because sometimes our district adopts something and you're like, what in the world? And that's when you've got to use your best judgment to kind of level up whatever tool, whatever program you have, and really make sure you're giving your students what they need. It's easier said than done, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that answer. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Melissa with Kids First Dyslexia Services. I am excited to share with you my private practice. Kids First Dyslexia Services is a private practice that specializes in dyslexia therapy. Each one-on-one session focuses on instruction specific to your child's needs in a nurturing environment that develops self-esteem, builds confidence, and fosters a sense of accomplishment, resulting in happier kids with higher levels of achievement. We provide a professional, personalized experience, always putting the child first. We value the relationships with both our students and parents, because strengthening skills and overcoming hurdles to achieve desired goals and success is a team effort. For more information, please visit www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com. That is www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com.
Hi, this is Amy Rodenroth, and as part of the Dyslexia Duo podcast team and owner of Discovery Dyslexia Services, I want to talk to you about my business. Our COUT-trained team offers expert virtual or in-person therapy located in Prosper, Texas, using proven dyslexia curricula like Take Flight, Build, MTA, Alphabetic Phonics, and Reading by Design. We also provide crucial independent evaluations and advocacy services. Don't wait. Empower your child today. Visit www.discovered.com to learn more. That again is www.discovered.com. Discovered, covering all your dyslexia needs. Let's return to the show.
So if you think about some of the red flags a classroom teacher might be able to evaluate to try to consider if their student might have dyslexia, what are some of the key data points? What are some things that they need in order to determine if their student may have dyslexia, and or what would they need for a dyslexia evaluation recommendation, things of that nature?
Yeah, well, I think, a huge thing is going to be a family history of reading difficulty. Mm-hmm. When you see a weakness in phonological awareness, that is a big red flag. If they're having a hard time blending or segmenting or rhyming, that is giving you a red flag. If they have a hard time learning their letter names and sounds, that is a red flag. And of course, if you're looking at older students, their word reading ability, you're going to see struggles with fluency. You'll see struggles with comprehension. And sometimes people are like, oh, it's a reading comprehension problem. You got to look deeper, because it could be that they can't read the words, right? So we've always got to look a little deeper. But then I wouldn't just, because like we were talking about that iceberg analogy, I wouldn't just look at dyslexia with your testing. You're going to ask for, a more general kind of cognitive testing, because there might be other things going on. So yeah, you're just really looking at their specific weaknesses.
That's a great recommendation. And, when I worked in one of the school districts around here in the DFW area, and one of the things they did that I loved is every year they would collect their beginning, middle, and end of the year data. They would input it into the computer system, and we as dyslexia evaluators would have to go in and look at the history of their progression through developing their phonemic awareness, their rhyming, their segmenting, their blending, their alphabet letter identification. That was part of our evaluation. So we'd look at the history, we'd look at family history, just like you're saying, and all of that played a part. So if we did a dyslexia evaluation, we just looked at the profile sheet that said, okay, all of the formal evaluations say everything's in the average range. But if we look deep back into their kindergarten, their first grade years, we could see, you know what? No, they were struggling with this, but they went to our intervention program and they got some intervention on those skills. So that's why they're able to perform right now in the average range. They did have that weakness. That weakness is underlying still. I loved that component of it. And I think that that would be so helpful if other school districts would do something similar. Again, we talked about data earlier and how data can really drive so many things in the right way if it's used appropriately.
Yeah, if we use it appropriately.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Exactly.
And to kind of go off of what you were just saying, remediation, like tier 2 remediation, we've said it quite often, phonological awareness is the most sensitive to remediation. So you can normalize a phonological awareness score with a young child where it looks like, because I think enough people in education know enough about dyslexia to say, oh, it's a deficit in phonological awareness. And then they just look at the phonological awareness piece and go, oh, okay, well, nothing's there. Well, it's because it was normalized more than likely with tier 2 instruction. And like you said, knowing that background knowledge, knowing a family history, knowing that they've got a sibling in dyslexia instruction. There's a family history right there, and we need to dig a little bit deeper.
That's why I love that what you're talking about with the classroom data can show is that classroom data can be pulled to help the evaluators all along the process get that information, a really true picture of what that child has gone through.
And also why we need good, effective, research-based assessment in the classroom, because there's some assessments that have just been found not to be very accurate and that are like the same as flipping a coin. Will this child have a reading disability? It's a 50-50 chance versus there's some assessments that are much more accurate. So it's like a call for, our district leaders to really make sure that they're looking at the research support behind the assessments that they adopt.
I love that. I love that knowledge that you have about some of these assessments, because I'm right there with you. I look at some of this, I'm like, well, that's not very deep. But our teachers who haven't been exposed to this don't know, what they should be looking for. Wow, I love that. So you've talked a little bit about your own child with dyslexia. What could you, with the parents that we have, and maybe even some educators that have children with dyslexia in their own family, what would you tell them to kind of support what they're going through?
Well, first I'd say find their strengths. There are things they're good at. You need to find that. You need to amplify them. You need to praise them for what they're doing well, because it is hard. I mean, you think about it. Going to school, going to like a place where you feel like you're failing day after day, that is hard on your self-esteem. And I remember when my son was in kindergarten and and remember, this is before I had knew nothing about dyslexia. He wasn't diagnosed yet. And I remember he'd come home and we were like, what was your favorite thing about kindergarten? And he would say, going home. And at the time, we thought that was kind of funny, but now looking back, I realized like it was traumatizing for him, and it is traumatizing for other kids out there. Like my heart just goes out to them, because there they are, filled with these feelings of inadequacy, and they're in those halls every day, in our classrooms every day, just hoping somebody is going to help them. And so as a parent, we can't always be there for them, but we can teach them to advocate for themselves, and we can advocate for them until they are ready. And that's also, as a teacher, what is so hard, when sometimes I'm like, because I'm always going to be there for my son to advocate for him. But what about the kids who don't have parent support, anyone to advocate for them? I'm just like, I want to advocate for you. So I'm jumping around a little bit. Let me go back, focusing on the positive. A couple years ago, my son was in 7th grade, and we went to his parent-teacher conferences, and, he has like 8 different teachers, so we're going around. I wasn't going to stop by his like career and college awareness teacher, because he was already doing okay in that class. And I just remember his teacher coming over to him, and he taught a portion of the class that was focused on engineering. And he came to me and he said, I just want you to know that what I am teaching, this is his talent. He is so good at it. This is where he's excelled. He says, you need to put him in my class in 8th grade and my class in 9th grade because he's so good at engineering and figuring things out and the modeling, creating these 3D models and things. And I was so appreciative that his teacher made a point to come out and to find me and to tell me that. And so we put him in his class in 8th grade and he's in his class now in 9th grade. And it's so amazing to find what he is good at. And so that's what I'm saying first, find their strengths and try to amplify them. And then back to the advocacy thing, teach them to advocate for themselves. And that is hard. I remember when my son would come home, elementary school, and he would tell me things and it's really hard as a parent not just jump in first. He would be like, I don't get to go to the special activity on Friday because I didn't finish my work. But he's like, but they're doing that work when I'm in resource, which is his special education pullout. And I'm like, yeah, that is not fair. But I try to get him have you talked to your teacher about it? Can you try to talk to her? And he would say, but you're the one with the brave voice, Mom. You're the one with the brave voice. And so, it was trying to teach him to use his brave voice. And I am there and I will help him do it. But more and more trying to teach your kids to advocate. So I guess that's my two big things for parents, find their strength, amplify their strength, and help them learn to advocate for themselves.
That's great. Do you know of any parent groups that can support advocacy for students with dyslexia?
Yeah, I would definitely reach out to your local, see if you have a local decoding dyslexia organization. Most states have one. It's kind of a grassroots organization and it's made up of a lot of parents. And that was invaluable to me when my son was first diagnosed, was kind of going, there. They had a social media group, they had a website, they have activities throughout the year. And, my son now is a decoding dyslexia youth advocate for our state. And so that's really neat. But I think that is an organization that's just doing great things and could be so helpful for you as a parent.
Great. I appreciate that. I mean, I think that a lot of times parents, they know about the decoding dyslexia groups in their area, but they don't know a lot of the other groups that are available. So I appreciate that info. And then also, as far as what do you recommend for maybe some classroom teachers to do that could advocate for the students who maybe don't have the advocates at home?
Yeah, that is, well, I would say learn as much as you can about dyslexia. I think Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Shaywitz is a great book. And she also has I'm pretty sure it's still available. There's a free massive online course through Yale, I think it's through Yale University. And that is a great resource. So becoming informed as a teacher. And then as you're working with that student and you find things that really help, consider adding those accommodations into their IEP or, if they don't have one, or into their 504. Sometimes you think, well, this is just what a good teacher does, but not all teachers moving forward are going to have your level of knowledge. And so putting those things in an IEP that are really helpful for that student can be a way, I think, as teachers that we can help them. And also as a teacher, just realize there is a difference between accommodations and intervention. Sometimes we only provide the accommodation, but the students also need intervention. They need the instruction to help them get up to grade level. So both of those are really important.
Yes, they are. So we're getting close to wrapping it up. But our listeners really like it when our guests suggest articles, web pages, books. What are some suggestions and who inspires you or continues to inspire you in what you do?
Definitely for dyslexia, Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz. I mentioned that one. There's a couple great websites, just reading in general. There's Reading Rockets and Reading Universe. There's a lot of fantastic information on both of those websites. And Reading Universe is a little bit newer. So I don't know, some of your listeners may have heard of Reading Rockets. Reading Universe is a little newer, but they're putting out great content and videos and free decodable passages and all kinds of like little tutorials and things. And so they're still adding to their database too. International Dyslexia Association is great. The Reading League is a wonderful organization to follow. People who inspire me, definitely Dr. Louisa Moats, huge, such a wealth of knowledge. I'm so incredibly honored because she actually wrote the foreword for my third book coming out, Rock Your Literacy Block, which is just huge. So she is one of my heroes, as well as Dr. Anita Archer. Anita Archer wrote my foreword to 7 Mighty Moves. So you can see, like, I asked my heroes, and it feels incredible to have their support. But Dr. Anita Archer has an excellent book called Explicit Instruction. And I mean, if you have not read that or watched Anita Archer's, any of her videos modeling in the classroom, she is amazing. She's the queen of explicit instruction. And for writing instruction, I'm inspired by Dr. Karen Harris. She developed SRSD, which is the most, it consistently gets the highest effect sizes in writing interventions. And we're talking about 40 years of research. What? And Dr. Leslie Laud, who has kind of helped me figure out how to best apply SRSD writing instruction in the classroom. So we didn't even get to talk about that. But so all of those people, and I'm also so inspired by other educators. I just think we need more educators speaking out and sharing, because it is one thing to take these amazing experts and the research we hear about. It's a whole nother thing to take that information and apply it in our classrooms. So it's just huge when teachers who are knowledgeable and have that practical experience are sharing what they're doing in their classroom, whether it's just with other coworkers in their building or whether it's online, whatever. I'm so inspired by other teachers and grateful for them. I love teaching. I think what we do is so important.
How long have you been teaching?
It's funny because like I have to do the math because like even you ask me how old I am and I'm like, okay, wait, let me figure out what's my birth year. Let me subtract. So I think it's like about 14 years now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I taught 5 years and then I took this break to just take care of my children. And then I went back when my youngest was like in preschool. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful that you had that time with your kids?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree. I had that time too. And I'm thankful. I took mine on the front end and then I went to work. So I love that time.
I did not get that. I yearned for that. I get that.
Okay, so I've got the magic question that comes at the end, and we still haven't made that noise. That's the magic noise.
Okay.
So the magic question is, if you had one wish that you could grant for our students, what would it be and why?
Well, that's easy. I want all our students to be proficient readers and writers. It is the greatest gift we can give them, is to teach them to read and write, because it opens up windows of opportunity for our students. It gives them so many more choices of things they can do in their life. It really does change lives. I had lunch with a man one time who he didn't learn to read until he was an adult. And he said that he always had this pain in the pit of his stomach. But once he learned to read, the pain went away. And he said, reading takes the pain away. And I just thought that was so impactful, and that, we all are playing a part, whatever our role is, whether we are a classroom teacher, an interventionist, administration, a parent helping our own child. We all have a role to play here. And it's just the greatest gift we can give our students is the gift of literacy. So that's my wish for all of them.
That's great.
Love it. Thank you for that.
That's wonderful. Well,
thank you.
A real pleasure having you on our podcast, and hoping we'll get to run into you again soon. So where are you? Tell us a little bit about your schedule. I'm not sure when this is going to be published, but it'll probably be, I would imagine, during the summer. Tell us a little bit about your upcoming schedule, because you'll have summer maybe off. So where are you going to be?
Yeah, I have, several different places. In early June, I'm going to Texas. Region 10 has a conference. I'm excited there. Then, oh gosh, I'm going to a few different places in July. I'd have to go and look. I'm pretty sure I think I'm going to Texas again and Michigan again and Indiana. Well, Indiana's in August. Anyways, I have a few others. I really should post my schedule. I kind of lose track a little bit, but I'm going to several different places. I'm really excited. I love sharing what I'm learning with teachers, but I don't want to leave the classroom because I love teaching students more. So, but I love that I have the opportunity to also travel and share and speak and that kind of thing. So
Do your kids come with you when you travel?
not usually. They will stay. And it's usually it's very quick. Like I leave the day before, I come back the next day after I'm done speaking. So my husband will kind of hold down the fort here.
Nice. Very nice.
Well, if we are at Region 10, which I think we're toying around with being there, maybe you'll have to come by and visit. So
yeah, for sure.
Or I'll look out for you. If I don't know if Amy's going to be able to be there, but I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to be there. So
yeah, and I think it's free. I think I saw it's like a free conference.
It is. It's a conference. It's a reading conference. And is it the 6th of June?
It's the 9th, I think. It's a Monday.
9th. It's a Monday.
Of June?
Yeah, it's June. It's not July. That's the one you're thinking of is the Dyslexia Summer Institute.
I can't get that straight in my head. Okay.
There's always a lot of things. And are you in Texas too, Melissa?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's always, I feel like, a lot of things in Texas. And Texas is so big, I end up going there quite a bit. Yeah. Okay, Colorado. It's Colorado that I'm going to, and Nebraska. I'm going twice to Nebraska in July. So, see, I have to look because I forget. There's so many different things, but yeah. So, yeah.
So this is Amy.
And Melissa.
And we're the
Dyslexia Duo.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The Dyslexia Duo podcast hosts are Amy Rodenroth.
Melissa Dean.
Our producer is Greg Rodenroth.
You can find us on Facebook at The Dyslexia Duo.
Email us any questions or comments at thedyslexiaduo@gmail.com.
Awareness is so important. Share this podcast with your friends,
family,
and teachers.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.